All right. Hey guys. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Tovi Spira. I'm the Education Director for AWFS, Association of Woodworking and Furnishing Suppliers. We're an association and also a trade show, and one of the things we do is we try to educate our members and our industry about topics that are really important for the wood industry and manufacturing. So it's really my pleasure to bring together Jon Muller and Brian Hamilton today to talk about cybersecurity specifically for the woodworking industry. Jon Muller is the president of Fineline Architectural Millwork in Costa Mesa, California, and Brian Hamilton is the founder of Mad Data IT and cybersecurity company. So John, I'm just going to let you dive in first and just kind of talk about Fineline and what you guys do, and then your experience with the cyber attack.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name's Jon Muller, like you said, and just a small, big cabinet shop here in Costa Mesa. We focus mainly on finished carpentry and cabinetry. We have two shops, about 30,000 square feet between both facilities, about 105 employees. Um, I had an incident happen to me probably, I don't know, about 3 months ago, and I just feel it's very important to get the word out there in the industry so that I can help other people out and not have to deal with this ever. It was definitely something that was I wouldn't say life changing, but it caused a lot of problems for us in our organization for over a week, and now we're still dealing with it after. But we were attacked by a company called Akira. Most people say, it's never going to happen to me because I've spoken to multiple companies after to share my experience. I want people to know what happened so that they are educated and they do get the right resources to protect themselves from this happening and ever happening to them in their company. Because after hearing about this company being 43 million in sales, they call it, which is extortion, taking money from people like us that are working hard for it. They A lot of companies, they just don't believe that it could happen to them. So quick story, came in one morning, to find that all of my files were encrypted on my server. Everything at first, that's what we noticed. All our file names extensions were changed to the Akira, extension on it. And I have a little bit of IT background from my old companies that I worked at over the years before I got involved in Fineline. So I want to say that I think we're a little more advanced than a lot of the smaller shops. And I kind of had the same attitude, like it's never going to happen to me, kind of thing. And here I come in and all my files are locked down, my machines can't run, nobody can work, everything's locked. Fortunately for me, as they started moving they move laterally after they get into your system. We were able to pull the plug on them before they got to the individual computers itself. But and if I explain to people how our servers are set up, I want to think that we were somewhat prepared for it. We have Fineline Server 1, which is our backup server, which basically replicates Fineline Server 2. Fineline Server 1 and 2 also have domain controllers on it, both of them. Fineline Server 1 was running a Hyper-V, basically backing up all of our virtual machines. We use our virtual machines to isolate all the different softwares that we use here at Fineline. And even with having that set up the way it was, we also had QuickBooks, which was being backed up in the cloud. So we had not only being backed up in Veeam, it was being backed up in the cloud. We're using Retrospect to back up our file servers. We also had offsite backup systems that were backing everything up except for our virtual machines because of the data was so big, and then we weren't doing it at the time. And one of the bigger mistakes that I learned is that one, we didn't have immutable backups, meaning where you put a time limit, so somebody comes in, they can't delete your stuff right away. Which, again, I thought I knew everything and I didn't know, but I'm learning as we go along. And two, we weren't backing up everything. We weren't, and it was very critical that we should have been backing up everything. And I tell you, when we get a little bit into it, the story, we got very lucky because we had some cold storage that we backed up in 2022, and we were able to restore some things back to that. But you know, the more I talk to people, the more I hear from them saying, you know, look, it's not going to happen to me, and I'm like, look, it happened to us. And a lot of people don't talk about it because when it did happen, they dropped a file on our desktop, basically having us download an encrypted messaging system to talk with them and communicate with them. And I took a computer that was completely off the network, downloaded it, and you know, I did it just to kind of play around and see what they did want. And you know, for a company our size, they were looking at about $250,000 to release everything. So you know, panicked, didn't know what to do, sat in my office with my hand on my head, kind of thinking like, what do I do? Raced out and hired a security company right away, put them on retainer to kind of look into how it happened, and what to do moving forward. You know, I just got some recommendations from some friends. A lot of people said pay them, you know, and a lot of people said you pay them, they get really good reviews online, like it's a business to them. And because they don't want, if you pay them, they don't want people writing they didn't give everything back to you, because then people are not going to pay them. So like, and I had all these things being thrown at me at the time, like, should I pay them? Should I redo everything? And you know, I chose to redo everything. I chose to put my feet in the sand, and we spent 3 nights back to back sleeping on this couch over here, redoing, you know, close to 40 computers, 2 servers at the time we had to rebuild. We had to go down to our data center down in San Diego and pull all of our data and rebuild everything. Unfortunately, they got into my Veeam backups because they were on Fineline Server 1 at the time, and those held all of my virtual machines. So um, while we were rebuilding everything, I thought in my head back in 2022, we had something going on at Fineline. So I backed everything up on a cold storage that I just had unplugged sitting there. So I was able to get all my SQL Server databases for Tractivity, Cabinet Vision, AlphaCam, all the different softwares that we run. We lost from 2022 to 2025 stuff that we did in between, but you know, it was kind of a good time for us to do a little house cleaning. I brought the team in, and once I was able to focus and get everybody set up in the drafting and engineering department, I had them come in and we kind of rebuilt everything, but we had at least a foundation. So, you know, a lot of takeaways from this is, you know, as the owner, I would tell my IT guy all the time, I'm not doing multi-factor. I'm not doing this. I want a small password. Well, big mistake, because this is what happens. You know, now we have 25 character passwords mandatory. We have MFA, so multi-factor we rolled out for everybody. Um, you know, all of our Sonic Wall, which we use for our VPN for people to get in, it's all locked down now. We went through and scrubbed it and made sure that, you know, it's going to be much harder for them to get in, because Akira likes they tend to go towards, I think, Sonic Wall and a couple other ones where they that's where they get in when there's no patches. We're making sure that the patches are done regularly now. We got rid of all of our old computers, so I purchased another 15 computers, so everything's all up to date with Microsoft now. Um, you know, and we put in the immutable backup systems now. So I don't know. It's not bulletproof. I'm sure they're always one step ahead of us, but I just want to bring awareness to the community that I work with and work close with, and make sure that people are covered and make sure that they're doing the right thing, and that's really my story behind what happened. And I hope that Brian, I'll talk to you offline about stuff. I want to learn more about how to protect my company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was going to say, before we transition over to Brian, I just had a couple questions that I'm thinking of, John, as you're talking about it. My first question is, did you ever find out how they got in?
So because Fineline is such a fast-paced company, I made the decision to not move forward with investigating how it happened. The company that I hired out of the East Coast came in and they said, you have two options. Option one is you can be, radical like you are and just go rebuild everything. Or option two, we take about a week or two to go through your system and we identify how it happened. We give you a report on how it happened. And in the business that we're in, our customers are now. I couldn't afford to shut my business down for a week or two to find out later that they got in through. So they did some forensic investigation and they think that it's through the sonic wall. They think it was through a VPN. They don't know if it was an individual person who worked for me that somehow got hacked and then their passwords got out. They don't know the exact, but they can tell where it came from, where it originated from, where the traffic was going through and everything. But again, I just don't have the time. I had to move.
And you saying where it came from, did you find out any clues as to, was this some, an organization within the US? Was it outside the US? Things like that?
So it's an organization in Russia. It's a spin-off from another major one that's out there. Started in like 2023. I did a lot of research about them. I kind of had a lot of time to sit in the back office while I was rebuilding all the computers at nighttime to read about them. And I learned a lot of how many, I think since 2023, 2024, they made over $43 million in extortion is what's been recorded. And there's other small cells that are coming off of these guys now that are getting involved in doing the same thing. And really the smaller the cells are that come off, I feel like they go after the guys in the smaller businesses because like we always say, do you want one big customer or you want 10 smaller ones, and they would rather go after a handful of these smaller ones because the likelihood of them paying because they don't have the backups that we have. They don't have the infrastructure that we have. And, so I think that's why they're attacking. And I heard that they mainly attack manufacturing businesses, and then also to go another step, more woodworking businesses. I don't know why, but that's what I was reading online, a lot of the reviews.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear, Brian, you chime in on that also. But before we do that, I have one more quick question, and then I think let's switch over to Brian, and you can talk about from your perspective and your experience. Jon, do you have any kind of estimate about, in those, again, 3 days, right, that you were down, how much revenue did you lose in that time?
I want to say we're close to 300,000
Okay, so it's all
between.
like comparable from what they were trying to extort from you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I did a lot of it myself. Where I had two other people in here with the IT system, and then I also had because I basically put the security company on hold while we did this. Now they're back in with us, and they're going through everything to make sure that we're locked down and we're secure moving forward. Or like nothing's a definite, right? It's 99.9% of they're going to lock us down, but um, I would say it's more the labor to get it set up, and then yes, the stuff. We were very fortunate that I was able to our machines in the back. We were able to disconnect them from the network, and we were able to bring out stuff to the floor and manually run it to keep things going at the time. As it got deeper into after hour 5 or 6, we started realizing things we can do to make it happen, make things happen where we weren't completely shut down. I didn't sit there and announce it to all my customers. I didn't sit there and and let everybody know. After the fact, we told all the employees, sending out a letter. I had to get a lawyer involved to make sure that we offer services for people that so that if whatever their credit check and stuff like that, I had them get involved in it. But when it comes down to it, yeah, maybe it would have been better if I paid him, but at the end of the day, I don't condone stuff like that, and I'm pretty thick. I got a thick head when it comes to that, and I was not giving it up. I'd rather sit here for a week and spend more money than give him the money.
That's the New York in you, John. I
Yeah.
know. Well, and I'll say, and Brian, maybe you comment on it and feel differently, but I think to my perspective, not being in that space, not having gone through it, I think the fact that it's of a similar cost, yeah, maybe a little bit more, but I see that as a win, to be very honest, because either way, you had to go through that, whether you paid them or do what you did, right, and rebuild everything yourself and lose some of that, that manufacturing time, but you're denying them, right, that opportunity. And I think the more companies that, could approach it that way and say, look, yeah, if it's going to be the same cost anyway, then, screw these guys. You know what I mean? We don't want to keep this going and enable them. So I really appreciate that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's switch over and then we'll save time at the end and we can just chat and ask some questions. And so Brian, if you could also again talk a little bit about yourself and Mad Data and what you do, and then your experience around this type of attack and especially around our industry.
Sure. Brian Hamilton, I founded a company called Mad Data IO and originally in Virginia. Now we're in Texas. I grew up myself in a manufacturing family. My dad was the president of a cabinet company in South Florida, and my mom built custom cabinets. And so I grew up on shop floors as a kid and or somebody's home installing cabinets, sleeping when my parents were doing the work. And so it's kind of the industry I know. It's a passion that I have. And so as a college, I was working in cabinet shops, doing KCD design work and AutoCAD for them, and worked my way into IT security and law firms, and then started this. And somehow, some way, cabinet shops has come coming back into my world. And so we've been really fortunate that like Cabinet Vision and Microbellum trust us to take care of their customers and support them over the years, and built great relationships in both of those companies, that they recommend us to take care of their clients, just because we just happen to know the cabinet shop so well in the industry and manufacturing. Manufacturing itself globally is number 4 target in the world. They usually rank the top 5 or top 6, but tend to be around number 4, but you'll always find them in the top 10. The reason why that is, depending on the revenue size of the manufacturer, especially when you have a generation 1 owner. When we build, like all of us, when we build something, we bootstrap it. We buy what we need, and everything else we kind of look at it like, hey, we'll deal with that later. And so as we're growing in our plants, every Gen 1 owner I've met has been like, I want my CNCs, I want these edge managers, I want all these other things that make it work for me. Cool. And I love that. But the IT tends to be the last thing that they tend to deal with. And so then I come through and I'm like, hey, we really need to do this. One of the things that, like, we need to upgrade this equipment. One of the things that has hurt manufacturing itself is, like, for example, CNCs. You spend $250,000, $500,000 on a CNC, and you bought it in 2001 or 2002. It's got an old operating system on there, but it does its job. It does its job. And so there's no operating system upgrades for it. And the only solution is go spend another $250,000, $500,000. That's the answer. And you're like, for what? And so there's a way to handle that so you can keep using that piece of equipment, because it's not bad. The network has to be set up different in order to protect your house. That's all it is. And so oftentimes their house isn't set up correctly. And once it's been addressed, everything's fine. You can keep that legacy equipment because it's doing its job. One of the things about hackers too is, like, John, I appreciate the fact that you pay them, because when you pay a hacking company, the probability of them hacking you again is 5 times more likely, because now you're a revenue source for them. They paid once, they'll pay again, and they'll pay again, and they'll pay again. And they know that. And so that's also in, like, that John, I think you did a good job on how you handle that in terms of just not paying them. Yeah, it hurt to go through it. And normally when we go through a hack, it hurts. But we have to look at it not as a race, but more of a marathon when you're going through a rebuild process. We had one of our manufacturing plants, now they're a chemical manufacturer, And we were rolling out brand new SOC-based security, which SOC Security Operations Center, like all our endpoints that we put our machines is SOC-based, every single one of it. I've got a data center in Atlanta, and another one in Pittsburgh that looks at our stuff, and then I have another data center in Baltimore that looks. I've got three different data centers that are looking at our machines, because the fact is, just one of those guys will cost me $175,000 to have a security operation person. So I can't afford that. You can't afford that. So we outsource it to groups. This is what they do. And they monitor using AI, and they see the trends. They see the global landscape of what is happening. And so something happens, for example, I'm just going to use New Jersey just for the sake of it. New Jersey, they see the problem and they patch it to all their machines. So there's a great value in pool-based security. And so it's constantly being pushed through. And so having that type of system is incredible in place. I've had one customer date that's been hit with ransomware, and that was in 2018 when we were rolling out our new SOC-based security, and that was that chemical plant that I sold everyone on it. I just didn't get to them in time. And I started rolling things out beginning of September, and they got hit in November. We had so many customers. There's only so many bodies we have I can put in an office, right, to do this stuff. So when I got there, George basically said, rip it all out and replace it. So that's what we did. We ripped it all out and replaced it, because some ransomware will actually get into motherboards. So even if you wipe and reload the machine, it doesn't matter. The ransomware is still sitting in the motherboard, and it reactivates like 10 days later. You're like, what the heck? I thought we got it. So that's one of the things, that reason why insurance pushes you to getting new equipment. It's always great when we encourage our customers that we actually have an action plan that we give them. So if something were to happen, that's our playbook. We run the playbook, because the playbook tells us what our emotions were in the moment. And the playbook gives us action steps that we go down. So we know when there's an issue, we just follow the playbook. Part of it, and the fact is, part of it we call insurance, and we tell them what's happened. And the reason why we call them is because some of our states are governing things that we can't control. They may say, what if some of your clients' it's called PII, personal identifiable information, gets out there. Well, that your state may require you to offer like LifeLock for that customer for a year. Well, insurance pays for that. And so it depends on how broad of a scope your customers are. Every state has governing laws, and you have to and then this is where the insurance gets involved. They notify the attorney generals of those respective states, and you kind of go through this whole action plan that they want you to go down, because it's not just you, it's your employees and the people that have done business with you. And so that's why insurance is usually the first call, and it's fine to start making steps. We're going to rip out the equipment. It's going to sit over here. Cool. That's where it's going to sit. And we're going to put in brand new stuff, and we're just going to rebuild. What I have found, the difference in manufacturing and compliance is compliance tends to pay for something called SIEM. Now, what SIEM is, it doesn't protect your computers at all. It basically is the thing that is able to find the needle in the haystack. That's the software that says, this is where it comes in. Manufacturing doesn't tend to pay for SIEM. It's not compliance based unless you're selling to the DoD. And then your security posture has to be a lot more higher. But I've encouraged our clients, is we have our SOC, and then we have something called MDR, Managed Detection and Response. And so imagine this. They're doing this in elementary school now. If a child begins to react emotionally in a way and begin to disturb the class, they'll remove the child from the classroom and put that child into a room so they can kind of calm down, collect themselves, and they bring that child back into the room after they've pulled themselves together. Imagine MDR doing the same thing. We have a computer acting up, and MDR says, nope, we put you in your quiet room. You're not allowed to do anything. And it stops you dead in your tracks. Whatever's happened on that machine doesn't affect anything else. Won't allow it. Because we're basically saying, you're in kindergarten silent room. We're not going to let you do anything. Your activity says you're doing bad things, silent room. That's where you go. Until we can guarantee you that machine is not going to do anything wrong, that's where you stay. If we have to, and so that's a whole lot better experience replacing one machine than a bunch. There are certain backups right now that have the ability to catch ransomware and won't allow it because the algorithm that it's created in to pull the backup in its images, that won't allow ransomware to go into its backups. We've used that backup. I have one client, they use microbellum, not a hacking attack, but what happened was somebody broke into their plant, stole their microbellum server of all things. And so they're all like, the owner calls me, he's freaking out. I'm like, dude, we got this. What's going on? I'm like, trust me, I got it. And I spun up her backup, and within 2 hours, his microbellum engineers were back and running. It was virtually spun up, and they ran on that VM for 2 months. We got a new machine in. Then I was able to restore that VM back into a new microbellum server, and everything was good. What I've also seen over the years is, depending on the area of the country that you live in, will determine how hard the hackers will hit that area. And it's really based on the education, the IT education of the area. So you have two different thought patterns with them. It's either we look for incredibly rural areas. I lived in Southwest Virginia, and so the FBI said it was one of the hottest hacking beds in the US. It's because IT in the area they were not doing a good job protecting their clients, and they didn't do a good job at educating their customers. I saw statistics several years ago that 1/3 of IT providers believed that ransomware was going to go away. That is an IT industry problem. And these folks are out educating business owners of what the right path is. So you have a 33% chance you're going to get somebody who's going to tell you the wrong information. And that kind of stinks as a buyer, because you don't realize you have this trust relationship that so-and-so says everything's okay, and it's not okay. And so I like to, when I sit down with IT guys, like, hey, what are you doing? Do you sit down and do education with your customers? So what do you do with them? How do you help them? What do you think about this? And start asking them probing questions about their opinions, because they'll talk if you ask them. And so and share their opinions about this stuff. So I always like to know, do you want to protect the whole house, or do you protect part of the house? And this another thing in our industry that's a problem when it comes to servicing a customer is, some of them have the attitude of, we want to take care of the executive team because they're important. We'll put heavy security on them, but we'll put light security on everybody else. Well, if Bob in the plant, the fact is looking at porn, is downloading stuff, that machine's going to get back to the executive machines. It will. And so you have to have a holistic approach when it comes to supporting people, not hey, we'll protect this part, we're going to leave this other part completely open. So that's the other things I've seen in the market. I've had one of my guys that I had done a lot of security training with, and he told me one time, he goes, Brian, I'm a dinosaur, I don't get this stuff. I'm like, that's all right, we'll train you. He's like, okay. He found a hack with his own insurance agent. He said, Brian, I think this is a hack. I'm like, all right. And I looked at it and I called his agent. His agent's like, my IT says we're covered. I said, Mark, here's the deal. Just let me do an investigation. It won't cost you a penny. I'll do it for free. If nothing's there, you're good. He's like, seriously? Yeah, it won't cost. It's all on me. I'll carry the water the whole way. He's like, all right. So I got into those machines, and I found that his credentials have been taken. His email had been cloned by a group out of Africa, and 5.5 gigs of personal data of his customers, insurance customers, are now halfway around the world. And there's not a thing he can do about it. But his IT said it was okay. And I said, Mark, we have to call insurance right now, because if we don't, you won't be in business. He called insurance, and I remember it because it was the day before the election in 2020. It was so like, because that all of that. And like the next day, I'm on the phone with them. We're dealing with the hack. And Mark spent the next 2 years justifying why he was allowed to stay in business. And, attorneys got involved and all that. And Mark is in business today. He's doing great. But he got there because of bad advice. So I would always say to a business, allow somebody to do a free assessment. Please allow it, because maybe somebody sees something that you don't see. Awesome. I have no problem somebody going and doing an evaluation of any of our work and any of our clients. In fact, we had one client, about 250 machines, and they have an IT director. He didn't tell us he was having an evaluation done, and I get a call from my SOC, and they go, "Hey, we have a problem. What's going on? Like, what are you talking about?" I said, "We're getting ready to shut the whole network down. There's this big, massive intrusion going on." So I called the finance directors. What is he doing? It says it's coming from his machine. They're going to shut everything down here in like 5 minutes if I don't get an answer. We had an IT group come and do an evaluation. Well, that's fine. I'm happy to let you do evaluation, but we have to turn certain things off in order for us to do that. And you have to say it's okay for us to turn it off, because we want to protect what you have. And the whole our approach is, and the approach should be, everything's important. Everything's important, from whether it's your firewall. And here's one of the cool things about like firewalls now, John, I think it's really neat, is they have a new follow me firewall solution. So we don't necessarily have to depend on traditional firewalls, but it's more like a SaaS model, and it's constantly updating. So any like roaming machines you have walking around that people take outside, or they work remotely, it creates the firewall construct around their machine that they're protected in home, and literally the computer is invisible while it creates a map drive into your servers as if they're right there at the house. So really cool thing about that is it allows like your engineers that use, whether they use Microbellum or Cabinet Vision, they get that connection, real-time connection, because the mapping's there, and it creates that real world experience like they're really there. So you don't have to use a bunch of VDIs or these remote machines to get into them. So that's what I've found myself of over the years of working in shops and dealing with ransomware in IT. It's really, this next generation of business owners really look at it differently than the previous generation of business owners. And I'm not criticizing them. I appreciate the previous group, what they did. But now our next gen business owners are looking at it completely differently, and what they're willing to invest in terms of like keeping everything together. Because it's not just your employees, you have the state mandates, and depends on what state you live in. Like California has some of the strictest IT compliance stuff in the country. New York Shield, Texas, Arizona, Illinois, like these states, Connecticut, these states have incredibly strict laws when it comes how a business is supposed to posture itself when it comes to their IT. In other states, there's no universal thing from the federal government. It's state by state that's governing what we do and how we're supposed to handle this stuff.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a couple questions first, and then I think we can all just chat a little bit, and I have a few more
Sure.
things to ask. So you talked about insurance being the first call that you make. At what point, or do you recommend or not recommend, when do you get law enforcement involved, and how might that help the business that's been attacked? Or maybe it doesn't, and it's just
It
an
doesn't.
after.
It doesn't, because, like, for example, in John's situation, the hacking group out of Russia, it's completely legal to be a hacker there. They just can't. They're not allowed to hack their own infrastructure. So they're allowed to operate because their government allows them to do it. So that's hard for us to understand, because we're like, no way, we're not going to let that. But you know, the police and the FBI, they're not going to do anything about it. They'll just take the information down, they'll look into it, but that's as far as it's going to go. It makes us feel good, but there's not a thing they can do.
Right, because it's not domestic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to ask, and again, this not my area, so one of the reasons I'm asking is because I'm curious, other than ransomware, what are other ways that you've seen foreign actors really try to disrupt or exploit businesses, especially in manufacturing? I mean, obviously, there's always some kind of financial gain, I assume, but are there other ways that, vulnerabilities do get exploited other than ransomware?
Out our outdated equipment that's used, like those CNCs. They have a lot of older equipment that's in place. Um, there's a way to stop that and to handle it to make sure that everything's fine, but that's what they do. They exploit that old equipment because a lot of them still has like I bet you half of manufacturing, at least in woodworking in the US, still has XP machines on their CNCs. I'm willing to bet it. At least half of them.
And can I ask, do you think that that's, some of those vulnerabilities or anything else, is that something that is particularly specific to the wood industry? Are there specific vulnerabilities that maybe aren't as applicable in other industries? Because you do work in other industries. So I'm just
Right.
curious about that comparison.
I find in manufacturing as a whole, I find that more with manufacturing because the equipment that you buy, I mean, it's a quarter of a half $500,000 equipment, probably on the average. John, is that correct? I would
Yeah,
say
quarter of a
there's nothing
million.
cheap about what you guys buy,
Yeah,
and
no,
they're not
about
giving it to you.
250 to 300,000, and you're exactly right. When it comes to, you hit it right on there. The first thing they made me do was disconnect my computers from my network on the
Yeah.
machines because they only support up to Windows 7. And called, I'll use a company SCM as an example. Called them up, and the only fix to that is spending $10,000 for a new computer that probably cost 100, and then having somebody flown in here to reprogram it all. So it's a lot.
Yeah. So they're all there's a company I dealt with, a glass company in Virginia, 200 machines. Half of their plant was still using at the time when we interviewed them to potentially take over as their provider. Was still had they had Windows 2000 on their stuff. So and that was there. So yeah,
I think that's
even the
a
bigger plants will deal with it.
very important topic, and I want to learn more about it. Is how to, segregate, because for us, when we're sending codes to the machines all day long, it's a
Right.
pain in the butt if I have to take a zip drive and run it out to the floor every time I want to send something. I mean, we go as far as having scripts on our local machines here in our office that automatically send all the stuff. It picks up all our files and sends it out for us. So not having the ability to do that right now until we figure out a workaround is it's frustrating for us. It slows our process down, our speed, and even certain files are getting lost now because our CNC requires, Cabinet Vision puts out I think an ANC code. It has to be turned into a PGM for our CNC to read it. The label codes have to go into a specific folder. So there's all sorts of things going on now that now we're having to manually do it until they either one, buy new machines, right, which is very expensive. Two, buy new computers and have them reprogrammed, and it's still not guaranteed. Like they're like they kind of like cringe a little bit when you ask them about replacing the machine. Like they almost don't want to do it, because I had to get on with multiple people with this machine company to talk to them about the issue that we had. And then three, obviously, if we can get someone like you to explain to us how to prevent that, how to, and without having to take it off the network.
Yeah, you can actually there's a whole way to do that to keep your traditional stuff protected. So you have to look at it like Main Street versus Elm Street, but there's no road that connects either one.
Right.
So you have to, yeah, there's you have to separate the network completely, make them each their own separate thing, and then there's a way to build connection between the two through another device that allows that traditional piece of equipment just to be there. and do what it does.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And I would imagine, speaking, that this is probably in most shops, this is going to be one of the bigger issues, is the machines are outdated, the software is outdated, and they're not getting patched. And like you said, nothing wrong about first generation. If it wasn't for those guys, then we wouldn't be in the position that we're in right now. But they don't look at, what's going on in the world right now like we do. We grew. I didn't grow up with a cell phone in my hand. My kids grew up with a cell phone in their hand, but I have enough technology background to understand it. And it was actually sad when I was going through it. I was talking to some of these different consulting companies, and they were telling me stories of companies in the Midwest and even in Texas that, like, these guys had businesses for 50 years, and they got hacked, and they had to shut their doors over a hack. It's like they had a real business that was profitable, that they lived off of, and because of something that's going on out of our country. And the more I heard about it, I was like, it's ridiculous that we don't do anything about it here in the United States. Like you said, contacting the police or the FBI to let them know that they did that. They're going to document it. They're going to, and that's it. They're not going to do anything about it. So
yeah, sadly, yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons why I even, when I talked to Toby, I said I would love to get on, whether it's this or a podcast or something, to be able to explain to people what we went through, so that it makes them aware of what's out there. And and I want to educate people. I was just at a golf event just recently, and I started telling people, some other customers and vendors, and what happened, because I have a lot of friends out there. Like, you talk about a lumber company that's selling, the amount of SKUs that they would lose and data that they would lose, like, and every single one I talk to, they're like, yeah, we have an IT guy in house, but I don't know what they do. And it's like, that's the same thing you hear over and over again. And and like you just explained, like that gentleman said, his IT got it or something. They don't. I feel like there's two different. There's IT, but then there's also security. It's like two separate. And I didn't have the security part. I think we had like the mindset of how to get by with the security part, but now I'm learning more about it.
Yeah, well, a lot of times what we do is we'll partner with an internal IT guy. Like, let us handle the security, allow us to do the framework, and you just do your job. Keep the day-to-day, we'll take care of the back door. Okay. And so, like, we'll take care of all the things you don't know how to do. Not saying you're dumb. We're grateful for what you do. We just handle this piece.
Yeah.
So make it easy. And that's been a really good relationship with working with internal IT and helping people like that.
That's kind of what I just did. I kept my internal IT person. He does all the normal stuff, but then he works weekly with this security company. They come on and they go weekly through our system to make sure that we're keeping it. But so and I like the fact that you focus on manufacturing, and you know the software we're using. You've probably seen it all. So I think it's important, with your company, to be out there in this industry, explaining, trying to help people out.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, Toby.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we're here and what we're talking about it, right? Because this is really important, and not enough people pay attention to it. I know we're coming up on time, so I just hoping I can ask a couple quick questions for both of you guys and get your opinions. One, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't ask the very obvious, which is, what are the early warning signs? You know what I mean? If it's not something as obvious as, like, John, you walked in and you couldn't get into anything, right? And that's very obvious. But, if they've been in for a certain period of time before that big trigger moment, are there things that you can look out for? Or is it really just a matter of, you just need to be constantly checking in with IT, with a cybersecurity expert, and they're really going to be the ones that see those signs? So I don't know, John, if you heard anything in your experience.
For me, the only thing that we noticed was that we had heavy traffic moving around, and my IT guy noticed it. And then we looked further and saw all our files being added with a file extension, but I don't know, Brian, if there's other things,
Yeah, that you're not going to see it because the term is called laying on the land. And they'll stay on, a hacker will sit on a network. Depends on how mature they are. Sometimes they'll stay there for 7 to 8 months. And that's what's called laying on the land. Land comes from local area network. They'll just lay there and observe and collecting data and getting information. And what they're doing is they're looking for finance, they're looking for HR, they're looking for key assets in the business. So they'll stay there until they can get there.
Yeah.
And once
So, yeah,
they know they have
really,
access into everything, it's a simple encrypt and it's done. You're like, what just happened? And
I think that really reinforces then, right? It's not, we're not saying each shop you got to like maintain and monitor all this yourself. Like you really need the experts to get in and do this check because it's not obvious.
right.
Yeah.
And it's not just us, it's crazy. 60 Minutes just had a special on it. There's more what you just explained of like water companies, electric companies, where they're just laying there and they're watching. The US is watching them, but they're not doing anything. They're looking for stuff. Like you
Right.
said. I think that's where people don't understand, like, wow, we're not getting hacked. Well, you could have something in there. Now, I'm going to ask you, Brian, is there software out there that you can that or your services provide that you can monitor our systems so that's
Yeah.
not happening to us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We put stuff on that, like we do firewall management that keeps it up to date. But we do it, but there's another method that's better because, and here's the thing about firewall management, the patches come out randomly and then you update it. And then it's a lot of manual process to it. It's incredibly manual, especially with like sonic walls are very, very manual. There are other devices that aren't, but they're going to pay more money for them. And a lot of people don't want to spend $12,000 for a firewall. They just don't want to go and buy a brand new Palo Alto. They're not going to pay it. Great device, but that's only one line of it. But yeah, I look at it as like layering up. These are your socks. These are your pants. This is your belts. This is your shirt. This is your sweater. This is like all of it as if you're going to walk out into a storm. So we actually bring people through a whole roadmap of what they should have. And if they're like, I don't want to do that, that's fine. Not a big deal. I need you to release us from liability of this. Okay. You're saying you don't want it. We recommend it. So that's kind of how we do it with our customers is we provide a whole suite, just a package. I prefer to bring the cake and say, here's the cake. I really don't like taking ingredients out because then it just doesn't, it's not the same. So,
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, I guess, again, probably very obvious, and
that's
I know
fine.
you both already talked about, I think, aspects of this, but I guess in a quick way, quick summary, which, obviously there's a lot more involved, but I mean, if you could give, you know, a business owner in our industry advice, right? Like this is what you need to do, or these are the steps that you should take to prevent this from happening. What would some of those steps be? What would some of that advice be? John, can you go first?
For me, I would immediately hire a security company that is reviewing your infrastructure. That I wish I had that. I thought I had that with my IT guys, and I didn't. There's a lot of internal stuff that you can do to protect your data, and I went through some of it before is what we're doing, and I know, Brian, you know a lot more than I do when it comes to this. I'm learning it as I go along, but for me is hiring somebody who knows what they're doing to make sure you're protected.
I would say first you need to do some type of an assessment on your plant. And number one, number two, I would suggest segmenting the network from the things that produce money for you in the plant, from those that do design, and then create the bridge between the two, and then make sure everything that's found is fixed. So that's how I would handle that.
And backups. I mean, really, if it wasn't for my backups,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been good. And the fact that we had multiple backups, they weren't able to get that. They say when they get in, they start moving laterally, whatever, but they couldn't get to some of them. So
And they do go for backup. So having a great backup service, I have found the best backup service on the market is made by a company called Datto, Datto. They have the algorithm that has the anti-ransomware built into it. They provide the device that backs up all the equipment. It's based on space. And so if a piece of physical equipment dies or goes down, you can spin it up immediately on the device, or they have multiple data centers they park your data in, or you can spin it up virtually from the cloud and keep going. I had a friend of mine in Chicago that one of his guys did the wrong thing. He had 32 clients and 20 of them got hit with ransomware. And Datto got all their clients back up and running within a 72-hour period. All of them. It happened on Friday night, and by Monday morning, 90% of his customers were running. They were slow, but they were running. They could do work. And Datto has 24-hour support. They hand off from engineer to engineer to engineer. And like when I'm in trouble, I want to talk to somebody. I'm not doing this chat queue thing. I don't think so. So for me, it's always been worth it paying for that service. So
yeah. And I would say that, that everybody's, I got virus protection. That's the other big one I hear. Well, we're using Bitdefender. That didn't pick up on this happening. We had CrowdStrike, right? And CrowdStrike alerted two of the machines. It alerted somebody in our IT that two of the machines were something, like you said, something's wrong. You guys gotta look at this. And these are two top, for me, I feel like these are two top, virus protection systems that you have out there, and they still didn't pick up on what was going on in our infrastructure.
and that's why you combine. You have to have the MDR with like the advanced the term. I hate it. They change so many different names now in my world. I'm like, oh my god. Um, so SOC based EDR is what you're looking for. Uh, SOC based endpoint detection and response.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want that third party. You get the SOC part is important because somebody's looking at it and they're actively doing it. It's not just saying, I got a problem. It needs to be resolved. And so the SOC part resolves the issue. And that's what's important. So, yep.
All right. So I think we're definitely at time, but I really want to thank both of you guys for coming on and talking about this. Like I said, it's really, really important. And more people, I think, John, like you were saying, you thought, well, it's IT. IT's got it covered. And it's really not the same animal. And it's big, big stakes. And so you have to address it. So John, I really appreciate you sharing your story because I know not everyone does that. And I think that's really, really important. So thank you for that. And Brian, thank you again for
Yeah,
coming
no
on and
worries.
sharing your expertise. So I definitely really appreciate it. I'm going to attach after this, if it's all right with you guys, contact information. So if people would like
Sure.
to reach out, ask questions, I'll be putting that on here so people can do that.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for
Definitely.
the time.
All right.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
John,
Appreciate
nice to
it.
meet you, Toby.
Nice
Good to
to
see
meet
you.
you. Talk to you.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye, guys.